Hello and welcome, everyone. Today is a beautiful Sabbath, April 6th day in 2024, and I'm joined here with Michael on Skype. And wow, we have really covered a lot of ground, and Michael has introduced the subject of the astrological what can we call it? Conjunction, or what is it called?
Constellation.
Constellation of Pluto in Aquarius, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Pluto in Aquarius. I'm just so unfamiliar with these terms, but that's mainly because I haven't studied it much. And Michael, you've studied it immensely in the past. And it's a rather fascinating topic in the sense that this is really how this world operates. Yeah, I mean, of course we have astrologers mentioned in the Bible. And but that's like the way I look at this, Michael, is that, it's like the old man. It's something that, I used to do things too that are, really not beneficial to the life of a born again believer and those that are on the path to salvation, because, obviously it's mentioned many times in Scripture that we're not to be, doing these things. But the fact of the matter is that all of the very powerful, wealthy elites use this system, and it's a very perfected system. And it's just so intriguing to learn about this to me, Michael. But this is really important, actually, I think. So welcome, Michael. Thanks for putting this together, by the way, because this is not a small feat.
Yeah, hello, Brad. Hello, listeners. Actually, you see, I'm a little bit uneasy with these Pluto in Aquarius because that would mean that there is an effect on a certain heavenly body on our lives. And I think that's just only a hint that there is something to it. And I guess that the papacy or the scribes who are just having this knowledge of the heavenly bodies and all this kind of stuff, I think they know much more that they won't tell us. So maybe that this is not Pluto in Aquarius only, but maybe there are also other things which are not being seen by the naked eye, or some constellation which has then been responsible for this. So I don't believe 100% that it's just only Pluto in Aquarius. I think there is much more to really look behind the curtain, but I don't want to go this route because that would be too specific for the majority of listeners, because we would like to have a biblical program here and not a program into all pagan occultism and all the stuff. But I think that's just to look behind what happened in the past and what is happening in the present times will also enable us to look a little bit into the future. So that's the same. There's nothing new under the sun. You see, that is actually the new world order, is the old world order restored. And that is just that it's a papacy, and the science you will get, this is the science from these scribes and Pharisees. So last time we talked about Pluto in Aquarius before Christ and a little bit after Christ, and now we have been developed until the 5th or 6th century. So let's just try to start it from there. I'm referring to the astrology podcast because that astrologer is very sophisticated, so he knows what he's doing in astrological terms. It's interesting enough that it seems from all the things that I have read that he's not into the Bible at all. Very interesting. Why do I presume that he's not in the Bible? Yeah, you will see, I think, in the next session. So I highly regard Chris Brennan when it comes down to astrology, but I'm not sure about his belief. First of all, he's not quoting the King James Bible. Second of all, he makes some assumptions that I won't agree upon. But hey, So be it. We are all here to learn, and maybe I have to learn something, maybe other people have to learn something too. But our common ground is that just we want to tell the truth. So therefore, let's look what had happened in the past. Exploring past periods when Pluto was in Aquarius in history to find out what will happen in the future now that Pluto is returning to that zodiac sign for 20 years with astrologers Chris Brennan and Nick Dagan-Best. During the course of the episode that I am about to refer to, we talk through 12 different historical eras when Pluto was in Aquarius and explore how this astrological transit has correlated with major developments and shifts throughout history, particular in the realms of technology, society, and even astrology itself. From the birth of natal astrology to the spread of new technologies and the reshaping of societies, these periods have been marked by profound change. So now we are in the 6th century, 550 to 574 CE. Pluto was in Aquarius. Remember, Pluto has not been discovered until the 20th century. So now to assume that, of course, you could calculate the positions of Pluto, which has lost his planet status quite some decades before. Very interesting that he only had the status as being a remarkable planet for a small amount of time, and afterwards they wanted to get rid of Pluto. I don't know for what reasons, and I don't want to see any conspiracy here, but let's dive into it. So 550 to 574. By this time, Chris Brennan says 250 years later, the Roman Emperor Justinian was ruling from that city, Byzantium, which had become the center point of the Roman Empire by this point. What I just would like to refer to is that we just will soon go our own path, but I think that credit is due to Chris Brennan who put up all these interesting artifacts in historical timeline. Chris Brennan, the Astrology Podcast, says, rightfully, he says, Pluto represents the underworld and underground in all senses, elemental, geological, instinctual, political, social, sexual, urban, criminal, mythologically demonic. It is a dark, mysterious, taboo, and often terrifying reality that lurks beneath the surface of things, beneath the ego, societal conventions, and a veneer of civilization beneath the surface of the earth that is periodically unleashed with destructive and transformative force. Let me ask you something. Unleashed. Or this sentence, Brett, if you think about this sentence, can you think of something which would be equivalent to this when it comes down to geology, what we talked about in all the sessions? Beneath the surface of the earth, periodically unleashed with destructive and transformative force. What is beneath the surface of the earth that is periodically unleashed with destructive and transformative force?
Would that be volcano?
Yes. Spot on, right?
Yeah.
You see, even if you describe Pluto as a transformative force and the lord of the underground and all the things, you see, when it comes down to geology, you see geological, when it comes down to geology, you could also say that's a synonym for an earthquake.
Sure, you bet. Yep. Oh, and by the way, there was just an earthquake in New Jersey, which is near New York. It's a rather large earthquake just happened.
Yeah, the Bible speaks of
yesterday.
The Bible speaks of many earthquakes you will follow. Yeah.
That's right.
So, Pluto impels, burns, consumes, transfigures, resurrects. In mythic and religious terms, it is associated with all myths of descent and transformation and with all deities of destruction and regeneration, death and rebirth. So that is also why Pluto is the ruler of House 8, which is the house of death in astrology. So Pluto rules death. So let's put it in a quite simple term for everybody. Pluto is the house. Pluto is responsible for death and transformation. That also means, for example, if you think that of death of a god, of death of a religion, of transformation of a religion, or death of a certain kind of society, death of a political structure. So let's put it this from capitalism to communism, the shift, if it would be rapidly and without any consent, without any election, without any either you live or you die, it's Pluto. Yeah, so we can't argue about it. It's just happening. It's a change in society. As I said, Pluto is the bigger brother of Mars. So Mars is in the combat when you are eye to eye with your opponent, and Pluto is your opponent when it comes down to things that you can't see, because it's just hierarchy. It's just society. It's just rules, laws. One nation which is very famous for being like a country for Pluto, which is very much Pluto-like, because they like to sacrifice themselves for society. So society is everything, and individual is nothing. One land which usually has been seen as a land which has been ruled by Pluto is Japan. The Japanese people, they are just been having not that big houses. They are just living in small cells inside a skyscraper, like ants, like cockroaches. And they work 6 days a week, and they do everything for their country, for society. And the individual does not count. It's just society. So, for example, in the Second World War, when you have all these kamikaze bombers who were just dropping themselves and their plane into the air carriers just to destroy the plane, and of course they would be then also being killed. But they don't care, because society and the land is everything. So that's Pluto. Yeah, Pluto means the sacrifice of yourself for society. Yeah, so these kamikazes pilots, they are just been sacrificing themselves for a bigger goal. Yeah, the end justifies the means.
Right.
Yeah, so that is Pluto. Yeah, you sacrifice yourself or a small part of community for the greater goal of our community, and that would also mean that you just
What? Look at that! They're doing the Roman salute. The Japanese?
Are you surprised? No, they're just waving with their flowers, but it looks a little bit like,
It looks like a Roman salute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Kamikaze documents shall be UNESCO World Heritage. Yeah, you see that UNESCO is venerating everything which is paganism, or just which venerating death. Yeah. See that Japan with their sun rising in the east. Yeah, this would be the equivalent of Pluto. Yeah, you sacrifice individual for the society. And one of the best examples just recently was COVID. Yeah, with the Pope claiming, you do this out of solidarity with all the people. Yeah. And in the end, it just, if you either you get your shot or I will shoot you. Mm-hmm. You have to sacrifice yourself for society. That is Pluto. So Pluto means radical shifts and change in society. Also artificial intelligence, for example. So there is always somebody who's smarter than you. You are just playing second fiddle. You see? Either it does not depend how smart you are, how many doctors or titles you got. There's always somebody who's smarter than you. You can be the best chess player of the world, but there is a chess computer which will every time outsmart you. And this is Pluto. You can't do anything about it because you don't have a real opponent. You have a system as your opponent. And you can't deal the system, and you can't outsmart the system. You can't fight with the system, because the system is always more powerful, because the system's got unlimited resources of data, of money, of people, financial, all resources, and you are just alone. Okay, with all these very, very negative things, then just we move on. You see that Uranus and Pluto also, when these two come together, not only Pluto in Aquarius, and the ruler of Aquarius would be Uranus, which means the god of the sky, there is a generation who's got Uranus and Pluto as a conjunction, and this is the generation of the 1960s, including Brad and me. And you see, the times of the 60s was a time of unrest and protests and all the things like that. So people that wanted to have a radical change. Pluto stands for change, and Uranus stands for out of a sudden, immediately, out of the center. You see, the symbol of Uranus is quite similar to the symbol of Mars. Yeah, you see, it's eccentric. Yeah, it's just a little bit like Mars. Yeah, but it's not just a spear and a shield, it's just eccentric, it goes upwards. So no wonder that Uranus, or actually Uranos in Greek, that was with an O instead of a U, Uranus, that means eccentric, the one who wants to fly to the sky with his wings. That's Uranus, Icarus a little bit. Yeah, so this is Uranus, out of a center, eccentric. So people, scientists, they would have usually a very prominent Uranus in their so-called horoscope. For comparison, this is Mars. Yeah, so Mars means also energy which is coming out of the center, but it goes in a certain direction. Yeah, so you see it usually been seen as the protective shield and the spear of a soldier. But if you compare that to Uranus, but in Uranus you got the sun in the middle, obviously, and then you got an arrow out of which is just directly pointing towards heaven. So Uranus, one of the things is that if it is describing somebody or an individual, it means that that individual is totally eccentric and is not being measured with usual standards, and he does not like criticism. So when these two come together, you can expect a sudden shift in the society, and that is what we saw in the 60s with all the protests and all these beat generations and Summer of Love, Woodstock, drugs and all the stuff. That was just an era or a decade, 60s to 70s, like a decade of unrest and protests. And Chris said that this Pluto-Uranus also happened not as a conjunction, because these planets are just moving very slowly. Uranus needs 84 years for one circular movement around the Earth, which means the square happened during the Arab Springs, which means unrest and protest and all like that. So just move on. So now we're going to jump forward against 250 years to the years 550 to 574 CE.
Yeah.
Let's exchange it with AD, right? This is
right.
A biblical program here.
That's right.
Chris says, today we have parallels with like microchips, for example, and the most advanced, when it comes down to silk, smuggled out of China for the purpose that the Roman Empire wanted to participate in all these money-making machine. Today we have parallels, Chris Brennan says, with like microchips, for example, and the most advanced microchips are manufactured in Taiwan today. Interesting that many people who are just into the research of the Malaysian, what was it, 370, this plane that has been missed, they say that there were people on board who had just a patent for some interesting microchips, but I'm not familiar with all this stuff behind. Or even artificial intelligence. Mr. Brandon said, I was reading a report recently that there was like a Chinese company that had somehow stolen or taken or had been able to reverse engineer a lot of the artificial intelligence from ChatGPT and all the OpenAI programs, so much so that the OpenAI company banned this Chinese company from accessing the program anymore. So there's much going on behind the scenes that we are not aware of. But as we are here a more or less biblical or religious program, /channel, let's move on.
Okay, yeah, 530, 533. Gibbon tells us the Emperor Justinian published his immortal works, the Code, the Pandects, and the Institutes. These contained a digest of the laws of the ancient Roman Empire, which henceforth became the law of the 10 kingdoms. Okay.
Okay, so much so. So then 795 to 890. Now it gets really interesting. Chris Brandon starts actually with paper is actually transmitted to the Islamic Empire during this time, and the first paper shop started being produced in Baghdad in Iraq nowadays in the year 793 under the Caliph Harun al-Rashid. So what happened then is that paper, which originally developed in China, then transmitted to the Arabic and Islamic Empire, then replaced very rapidly parchment, which then allowed for the proliferation of books and libraries. Interesting when you think about that timeline. When did Islam start?
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, good question. When was it?
Muhammad. Yeah, actually 610. But so then from 800 they had the possibility to write it down on paper. That would mean that everything which would be written down on paper, which then most likely was very expensive when it was new, introduced, must be very sacred or important texts. So first and foremost, I think religious texts. Yeah, so therefore, yeah, and then you spread the information you want to spread on paper, and that would be most likely religion then. So that would be a benefit of the wealthy people, that they had access to several information that the poor did not have, because they could not afford these papers and books. The House of Wisdom is probably found in the late 9th or late 8th or 9th century in Baghdad. So there was a great flourishing of cultural wisdom and translation at the height of the Abbasid Caliphate. So during this time there was a transmission and translation where the House of Wisdom, so to speak, was a library, but also research institute and translation project. Yeah, and they were being used for all spreading all this religion. So the development of paper as a spreadsheet of information, of course, then creates a sudden shift in society. Because usually people believe what books and papers and nowadays television are telling them. And the big one is in Europe is that Charlemagne was crowned as the emperor in Rome by Pope Leo III on December, of course, Christmas, pagan festivity, December the 25th AD, which was about 5 years into this Pluto in Aquarius period. Charlemagne succeeded in uniting the majority of Western and Central Europe, and he was the first recognized emperor to rule Western Europe after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, which is not a fall. You see that happens deliberately. This is just another, in Germany we say Grauzone, so a gray zone, where you do not know what their intention is. But as you see that the Holy Roman Empire of German nations, you see it's the Holy Roman Empire, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even carries Holy Roman Empire in its name. So Charlemagne, or in German Karl the Great, or Charles the Great in English, Karl der Große, Charles the Great, he was the first Roman emperor where it was combined both, the political role of a king with also his being crowned by the Pope. And this is the same as...
The same as, what do you call this now?
Pontifex.
Oh, yes, Pontifex Maximus.
Yeah, Pontifex Maximus is the Pope. But you see, when he is the emperor, the Roman emperor...
Yeah, combining church and state. Right?
Combining church and state. You see, the Holy Roman Empire, if you are the chief of the Holy Roman Empire and you are the chief of some holy thing, you must be godlike, right?
Mm-hmm.
I guess. If he bows down, or if he still bows down to the Pope, then he's not the Pontifex Maximus, but as being the emperor, you see that it's not, I think it's not by coincidence that the Roman emperor, since Julius Caesar, at least up to my knowledge, has been seen as the Pontifex Maximus, the bridge builder between heaven and earth. And if you think about the Japanese, as we talked about Pluto, nation, the Japanese emperor, he was also be seen as a god then. No wonder. So, you don't have a separation of church and state, you have a church state, actually. Holy Roman Empire of German nations. Yeah, you got the nations, you got the state, and the holy means religion. So you got a religious state. He also united much of Europe under his rule, and his rule laid the foundation for future European kingdoms and empires, as well as cemented the Catholic Church influence in Western Europe. Yes, of course, because the Roman Catholic hierarchy, they officially announced all these kings and queens and princes and princesses. They were the governors for the Pope. Especially, of course, all the countless counts, dukes, duchess, what else in German, because Holy Roman Empire of German nations. Charlemagne's close relationship with the papacy solidified, and the alliance between secular and religious authorities, and many historical houses of Europe trace their lineage back to him, or at least claim that their lineage goes back to him, like a famous vampire actor called
just trying to remember his name. It's too early for me.
Christopher Carandini Lee.
Thank you. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Charlemagne records. Yeah. Yeah. Chris Brennan, as well as me, think that is really important because it sets the foundation, like a continuation in some themes, like some of the Roman Empire stuff that we were talking about earlier, but also some of the things involving so-called Christianity, which is all absolutely spoiled Christianity. Or anti-Christian system. It grows and grows. And it's interesting that we hopped like from Pluto return to Pluto return. So the 248 years, we've hopped from Constantine to Justinian to Charlemagne. You know, as if we were just like sort of skipping across a little pond on top of rocks that, with every successive Pluto return, we get another one of those singularly, influential and powerful leaders in the European area that stood out or stand out among all others. Yeah. And this happens then also in one of the latest Pluto and Aquarius periods that we then move to the French Revolution, which saw then, at least officially, the beheading of a king. So a radical, more radical as a beheading of a king it can't be, I guess, the radical transformation of society from a monarchy, so a so-called democracy. And that also was the end of monarchy, at least the end of the importance of monarchy in Europe, basically. The astrologer Mr. Best, I can't remember the first name. Yeah, he sees, we see a guy who really wants to be Charlemagne. So speaking of the French king, who eventually puts an end to a Holy Roman Empire. We see some definite parallels between Charlemagne's area and we get to the French Revolution. Okay, so stepping back to the 8th century, Pluto in Aquarius period. Remember, every 250 years, it's just coming back. The first confirmed reference to gunpowder occurs in the Chinese text in the year 808 CE. AD, you see? That means gunpowder usually has been there to kill somebody, and there you are with Pluto symbolism, because Pluto means the lord of the underworld or just the ruler of house 8, which means death. So gunpowder, come on. Yeah, I mean gunpowder, Pluto, destruction, death, sure. Makes sense. Next period, 1041 to 1063. What are we expecting here? Paper really starts spreading in Europe, in Muslim Spain. 1056. The earliest surviving chemical formula for gunpowder dates to 1044. Where they really started working out. Interesting, huh? You see that. Can you imagine the Inquisition of the Spaniards and the Portuguese in Latin America without gunpowder?
Ooh.
I think that was their big advantage. That's why I came up with that insert here, Inquisition and Conquering. You see that? I think that therefore gunpowder was necessary because the natives in South America, they didn't have any. And that was the big advantage of these Europeans then.
I see.
Yeah, you see cannons, rifles, guns, bombs.
Right.
Production of gunpowder and fire arrows heavily increased in the 11th century, and they have centralized the production process, hiring carpenters. And a commentator on that video said, "You missed out the great schism between the Catholic Church and the Greek Orthodox Church in 1054. That also happened within that period. You see, when you think about religious paradigm shift or religious transformation. Some say the Orthodox Church is experiencing several schisms right now. The Russian Orthodox Church, think of Russia and Ukraine, has separated from the Greek Orthodox Church. The Greek Orthodox Church of America is having disagreements with the Greek Orthodox Church in Greece. Someone today told me that Athens disagrees with Constantinople on some points. I wonder how this will continue to unfold over the next 20 years. I don't wonder, because I guess that they will all be into syncretism then. That's my lucky guess, huh? One word religion then. So that was, what was it then? That was not that 1041 to 1063, 4163. Yeah, schism. I got also here, Schisma, German, in my script. Pope Gregor VII called Hildebrand absolute and unlimited dominion over the states of Christendom as successor of St. Peter and vicar of Christ upon earth. The Gang nach Canossa, the German king Henry IV, had to go across the Alps with his family and then to wade barefoot before and kneel down before the Pope to ask for, what is it? Brad, can you remember?
Oh, ask for his
forgiveness or what else?
Yeah, because he was, as far as I remember, in taking upon the liberty of deciding for himself his own bishops and all that.
Yes,
so
yes.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah,
I'm not mistaken.
41 to 63, but that's not within that period. To 41 to 63, let's take one sneak peek. 63. Now, the only thing which would be fitting would be the schism between the Russian Orthodox Church. So another big religious issue here. So then we go to the next one. 1286 to 1308, and there I've got more things going on, I guess. The astrologer says, during this period there were innovations in producing paper in Italy during this time period, roughly. He says Europe is concerned one of the first Europeans to travel all the way to the far most eastern provinces of China to spend some time there and then to come back and actually have a book published about his travels explaining the culture and the science and society. Everything he experienced, which was a pretty big and pretty eye-opening thing in the West, and that can also only be one guy, of course, Marco Polo. It's interesting because we talked about the Age of Aquarius, and I've made a second script dealing with the Age of Aquarius because the founding of the nation-state of China actually happened when Aquarius was rising on the ascendant on the horoscope, which was very interesting. Independently, I also got this thought quite a while ago, when the People's Republic of China is claimed by Mao Zedong. Yeah, Aquarius rising. The sign of Aquarius rising then. I think that these times when they just are creating a state, they are not being chosen on by accident. They have also a purpose there, that they fit astrologically. No, the Earth is not a planet. I got some additions to that period, which has not been mentioned in their sessions. That was in 1291. Switzerland has been founded as a sanctuary or just as a resort for the Knights Templars. And Switzerland, by no coincidence, I think they are the bodyguards of the papacy since 1506, so more than 500 years ago. Also in that time span, in that period, it was the papal bull Unam Sanctam of Pope Bonifacius VIII, which means that salvation can only be granted within the Catholic Church. And also in 1307, then the King of Spain, Philip IV, together with the Pope, they issued the restraint order for the Knights Templar. So on Friday, the 13th of October, 1307, the Knights Templars had been restrained, and so they fled to Switzerland with many of their possessions. Some say that was also because the papacy feared the influence of the Knights Templars in terms of bank settlements and all their wealth and all their influence throughout Europe. I can't tell because I wasn't there. My usual quote is, I wasn't there, I can't tell you anything about it. We have to either believe this or either believe that, because history has been written by the victors. So let's jump forward to the next period, 1532 to 1553, and I think that's just one of the most interesting time spans. Right, Brett?
Right. For sure.
Henry VIII divorced Catherine of Aragon. Aragon, remember, Spain, or the king to return in the Lord of the Rings called Aragorn. It's quite similar. So once again, Henry VIII divorced Catherine of Aragon in July of 1531 to marry Anne Boleyn, causing England's break with Catholicism and the beginning of the Anglican Church. I know you mentioned the Reformation, but the timing on this was pivotal. Interesting, also side effect. So this is the next period, 5032 to 5053. Close to 500 years ago. So, two Pluto areas before our own, Pluto in Aquarius. Oh, there's one thing that comes into my mind quite instantly now. So, the spread of the printing press. Gutenberg has been invented, the mechanical mass publication or production of books by his printing press in close to 1450-60, so 60 years ago. So they were developing the printing press to just not have to manufacture everything by hand manually, but like an automation, so with their rolling printing press, hard to describe now, but nevertheless, so printing press, which means that is also a transformation shift when it comes down to information, right? If you can guess the important this enormous impact they had on the so-called education of the people, when out of a sudden books appear that more and more people could afford to buy and read. That means a totally shift of information, and that's the same that we are now most likely will appear in our Pluto in Aquarius period when it comes down to the digitalization on artificial intelligence, ChatGPT. Everything is mandatory to have been digitalized. Your finance broker, your just bank accounts, you just buy and purchase all the stuff more with your credit card than anything else. And so this shift, I think, this overflow on information, this is likely to appear in the next 20 years. So that is the thing that happened in the past, and it's the thing that is happening now. So the spread of the printing press was the so-called revolution, let's say, of the education of people. 200 years ago, they were forbidden to read the Bible, remember? And now, 200 years later, or 250 years later, they could buy and purchase a Bible, and even then, a little bit afterwards, when Martin Luther has been translated the Bible into German and many other people in their native languages, they could read the Bible for themselves, and that was, of course, the total shift of information and total shift of say freedom of information. So that I remember that when I did a session with Jörg 5 years ago, with the book of Griesinger, and the German one, about the Bible, then we talked about in these old books that it has been stated that the Bible cost merely the loan of a usual worker for I can't remember, for several months.
Right.
Yeah, and now you can buy a Bible for $3.
Right.
Yeah, and nobody reads it. Oh, great, huh? This is a dumbing down of society. But you see that without the printing press, I think the people would not have been realized the point that Luther had, for example, or Zwingli, or Calvin, or Wycliffe, or whomsoever. Yeah, so that was huge, like uptick in the amount of books being printed in Europe during this period, where, by example, to give you an idea of what Chris Brennan is talking about in the year 1500, right at the beginning, just before the Pluto Aquarius period, there were only 2 million books that were printed in Europe around 1500 AD. All of a sudden, by 5050, so by the middle of that century, and by roughly the end of the Pluto Aquarius period, it had jumped from 2 million books to 20 million books were printed in Europe. And by the end of the century, 1600, around 150 million books were printed in Europe. So you see, this is just like the introduction of a smartphone.
Right.
When my colleague was having a smartphone in 1994, it was close to 6 pounds heavy. Yeah, and it had a handle. Yeah, so
Right.
it was a Motorola, if I remember correctly. So, and nowadays you got your smartphone, which is thousands of times more smart and can do almost anything. Yeah, so that was between 1994 and 2024, so 30 years. So can you imagine what happens in 30 years from now?
No,
I
can't.
I think I'm not going to be there, but and of course not allowed to make any more sessions. But I guess then people would have anything. You see that I do not know, holograms built in clocks and what else. Yeah, everything will be much more smaller. Everything will be accessible anywhere, because without the digital age, without the internet, you can't do anything, I guess, on purpose. Can't buy or sell, you know?
Right.
So in the Pluto Aquarius period, between 5032 and 5053, there was this huge upsurge in the printing of books as a result of the printing press, and not only the printing press, but the sensational new books and new information coming out. Yeah. So this book printing press caused this explosion in the proliferation of information. So the primary keyword for this time is the spread of knowledge. Whatever knowledge that means. Of course, also the spread of spell books and medicine and what else you can imagine. So, in that period was a major revolution, which called the revolution of the heavenly bodies. So the revolution, which has been started by Lucifer, Satan in the heaven, then was going down when Nicolaus Copernicus translated or co-written and written his book on the revolutions of heavenly bodies. So then there was a revolution of then information, of course. So that was very close after the Bible came out to mock the Bible. Yeah, learning against learning, so to speak. Cardinal Wolsey was also close in that time, I guess. The major one was Nicolaus Copernicus, a Polish clergyman, and the work of him as an astrologer and an astronomer. As an astronomer, that was a Freudian slip. He was an astronomer, actually. Copernicus published on the revolutions of the heavenly spheres in the year 1543, which is very close to one other thing, which has not been mentioned here on that episode, because they lay the focus more on secular things, or let's put it mildly, they lay the focus more on astrological constellations and terms. You see that when they use the CE for common era and all the stuff, you know that they are just astrologers. They are not Bible-believing Christians, obviously. Or they don't want to hurt anyone. I do not know, but I don't think that they are very close to the Bible on many items. But let's just continue here. 1543, a decade after this Pluto in Aquarius period started. And in that book of Copernicus, he argued that the sun is the center of the solar system rather than the earth. So this was a major moment and turning point in the history of so-called science, which triggered the Copernican revolution and also was pioneering contribution in the terms of a scientific revolution in general. So it's often treated as this was the start of the scientific revolution, which would then go on for a couple of centuries after this. So initially this was met, actually, first let's dwell on that point. This discovery about the sun of the center of the solar system was like a shift, an epoch changing shift, like an intellectual understanding of the cosmos and our place in it that can't be really underestimated. Without Copernicus, then Tycho Brahe, Kepler, Galileo, so forth, they're all standing on his shoulders, what they do. So yeah. But you have to remind yourself about our former sessions 2 years ago or so, that these people are all in line with the Roman Catholic Church. Mm-hmm. And if you have seen that interesting documentation, heliosorcery, where Kepler has drawn his source about the ever-penetrating sun and all the stuff, it's a kind of a forerunner to gravitation, where the graviton has not been yet found and will not be found, or will it in the future? I have a slight impression there will occur some strange things, but I have to write down a little bit of a keyword here that I don't forget it for the next session. So, okay. This is monumental, yeah, and this is one of the ships that I think that we are just experience soon. It's absolutely epoch-changing. So initially, this book of Copernicus has been met with resistance, and his book has actually forbidden, officially by the papacy, of course. You see that. First of all, they encouraged him to publish it. Yeah, his friend was also a clergyman. I think it was a bishop. Can't remember his name now, but you can look it up. And then afterwards, they are distanced from it. You see that because on the outside, they have to just declare themselves the Church of Christ, and they are the Church of Antichrist. And just to disguise themselves, they just having these trials against Galileo, who has been formally educated by the Jesuits. So that's an old game. Okay, so he ended up publishing it just before his death, partially due to some of these issues, and this one on the other themes that really comes up strongly during this Pluto in Aquarius period, which is that the church starts trying to control books. One of the quotes that Chris Brennan has is that the first of such a list in 1538, 6 years into this Pluto Aquarius period, the Italian Index of Prohibited Books was issued by the Senate of Milan. Italy, Wikipedia quote: the papacy and other cities and states across Europe soon followed the practice where certain books could not be printed, read, or owned, or anyone caught doing so was, at least in theory, punished. Further measures, including checking texts before they were published and the more careful issuing of licenses to publishers. So this was a period of institutionalized censorship. 1538. And another quote from the same article says that this, quote unquote, became a lasting reality of publishing from the middle of the 16th century, as rulers and authorities finally began to wake up to the influence of printed matter. And his colleague astrologer Mr. Best said, oh yeah, that's like fake news. So you see that the censorship is also not a new thing. It happened in the 16th century in a Pluto in Aquarius period, actually. That's interesting, huh? Mm-hmm. Because it starts, you see, before it starts influencing things and it starts influencing religious trends. So, for example, they say the Protestant Reformation combined with the printing press led to sweeping political, social, and cultural and religious changes at this time. And the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century weakened the authority of the Catholic Church, creating a more open environment for scientific debate. Yeah, Pluto always is associated with a kind of censorship then, because the powers to be, you see that Pluto has much to do with the social control or control of the masses. And the easiest to control masses for a government is to control the amount of information. So when the people have been deliberately not informed or actually disinformed.
Enter Klaus Schwab.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Great Reset, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they're trying to push on us now.
Yeah, you see, the Great Reset also means that you sacrifice your individuality for the common good or the
Sure.
society. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so church is trying to control books.
Mm-hmm. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, it's the same thing which is just happening here. You see that if you control books, if you control the internet, you control information. The outcome, the result is absolutely the same. Yeah, anatomy. He said one of the other major ones that happened during this period, the separate, is the Spanish conquest of the Incan Empire, where in November of 1532 the conquistadors captured the Inca Empire in Peru. Peru, you know? Peru, Amaruca, huh? That's Peru.
Yeah, right.
The land of the
serpent.
Yes, correct. Through deceit and brutality, basically, and this marked the beginning of the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire, leading to its eventual downfall and significant cultural destruction. 1532. So, when that in other terms, you know, where that the Spanish Queen, King, the Spanish house, royalty was absolutely close ties to the papacy. When the papacy had a bad stand and much problems in Europe because of the Reformation, they went to Latin America. And with the amount of gold, precious things, and this financial backup, they could counterfight the Reformation and just create all these universities, printing books, paying people. Yeah, you see that it's not possible without money in this world to gain some effect usually, except you are Jesus Christ. But you see, we know that we don't have the approval of 99 point something of the majority of people out there. Yeah? So they are destroying a religion, actually, quite literally, in Peru. And of course, it was the Spanish, but you see that you can also then exchange the Spanish with the papacy. So the papacy, the powers to be, who sent Latin America, who sent all these conquistadors and missionaries there, convert or die. These people, they have eradicated a complete religious culture, speaking of the Inca Empire. And that's interesting because in the same Plutonic Aquarius period, 70 after Christ, they destroyed the temple. So they destroyed another sanctuary of a very important world religion. The Spanish conquest of the Incan Empire, but there's also the Coronado Pueblo conquistadors who marched north and, take over of much what we call today Mexico in 5040 in similar sort of brutal fashion during Pluto's transit in Aquarius. That means it's more or less a religious war, I guess. Huh, Brad? It's a religious war. If you come as a Christian conqueror, so-called Christian conqueror, and then you destroy and enslave an entire nation. They did not come as friends. You see that Christianity, real Christianity, would mean that you love thy neighbor as yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
And
you
not to conquest an empire
neighbor.
and destroy temples and just rob them of all their belongings. But that's what the Roman Catholic Church, on behalf of the Spanish Armada, did.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Yeah, Jacques Cartier sails to what we called New France, discovered what will be called Quebec City and what we called Montreal, also when Pluto was in Aquarius. Also, he says that Kepler steals much information of Brahe. Yeah, you see that we have talked about this. The problem is it's too long ago, and whom to believe? That's not my point. My point is, at least you can call this small 20-year period early scientific revolution, because their book actually means the revolution of heavenly spheres. It's a revolution. Revolution means to turn around. And then you turn everything around. You only turn the Bible around, because in the Bible it's been stated that the earth is just here for the people, and the sun and moon has been created for the earth as a help for the earth, to enlighten the earth, and not the other way around. So that means that the earth is fixed. But that's a problem. You see that if you want to have a revolution, you turn everything around, and that is what revolution means.
Right.
So white is black and black is white. Or Satan is God and God is evil. You see that's the same concept. Yeah. What they have missed out is this. We're talking about a period from 1530 something to 1553. In 1540 they have officially been recognized as regimini militantis ecclesiae by the papacy. And then they have turned over, or they've just been successors of the Inquisition from the Dominicans. But it is not part of the astrology podcast. By accident? I don't know, but it's not part of them. So take a lucky guess why it is not implemented here. I don't know. I think that's just very important to see that within this Pluto and Aquarius period, the Jesuits have been founded, and this is the military to strike back to the revolutionaries or to strike back to the Reformation. So that means that's a radical shift. You see that it's Pluto and Aquarius means radical shift, and that's a radical shift then when the papacy says the end justifies the means. You got absolution in everything that you do. Just please fight the Reformation, and we are just installing you as a soldier force, as a military force against these Protestants. And then you, of course, you will label them as revolution, as a revolution against your system. Yeah, so it's just the term has always been coined by the people in power, right? Yeah, if a terrorist is labeling other people who are his opponents as a terrorist, then as a terrorist is labeling peaceful people as terrorists. Yeah, so that's the common ground in it. From many quotes from that quite interesting podcast, I would guess that they are just more into their science and astrology than anything else. So, but that's also the profit for everybody, that you can gain some knowledge on these terms where actually the rulers are just been playing with. So nothing happens by accident, obviously, because all these radical changes are just happening within this period. And once again, I tell you, this Pluto has also officially been recognized in 1930. I leave it up to you what you think when Pluto really has been discovered, or is it anything else who has a similar transit, or is it anything else that God, of course, the Almighty God of the Bible, is allowing to? So coming to the next Pluto and Aquarius period, that would be between 1777 and 1798. When Pluto was in Aquarius, there were big development happening very early on. In 1781, William Herschel discovered the planet Uranus, which expands our knowledge of the solar system, which means this is the first of the so-called trans-Saturnian planets. Usually in the antique, in ancient times, they had only 7 planets there. The last one was Saturn, which could be seen with the naked eye. And so this was the holy system of 7 plus 7 days. And the number 7, of course. And now, out of a sudden, in 1781, you have a revolution in the science. You see, the discovering of a big major planet is, of course, a revolution then, because it's just heavily distorting the divine system of the 7. So therefore, you can, of course, see the discovery or the planet actually itself. The meaning of Uranus means revolution. And then you only have to combine the dots. Pluto in Aquarius, and the ruler of Aquarius is Uranus. Pluto, Uranus means a radical social shift in science, for example. At least it means a social radical change with much destruction to the individuality of people, to sacrifice them for a common good. And that would be, I think, very much similar to the latest papal bulls. Caritas in veritate, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So William Herschel discovers the planet Uranus, and Uranus literally means the god of the sky. And that would be a great, great couple to Mother Earth, I guess. Or the Gaia movement. Pluto, on the other hand, was discovered, they say in 1906, but Wikipedia officially tells you 1930. So you see that give or take 20, 30 years, let's say 20th century, followed by the discovery of the chemical element of plutonium in 1940. Guess what they use plutonium for? You know, Brett, what they are using plutonium for?
Whoa, not good things.
Not good things, a destructive element then.
Absolutely.
And dangerous, that's what they tell us.
Yeah, that's what they tell us, yes.
So that means these planets or goddess, because Pluto as the Hades or the god of the underworld, yeah, you see that they got his own element there, a chemical element in the chemical tables. The same thing happened to Uranus, was discovered in 1781, and guess what, 17 years later they had the discovery of uranium. Yeah. So plutonium is a chemical agent, silvery gray. It's radioactive and can accumulate in bones, which makes the handling of plutonium dangerous. Atomic number 94 sums up to 13. Was produced and isolated in late 1940s, early 1941, means in the middle of the Second World War, by a deuterium bombardment of uranium. So there you got your Uranus and Pluto constellation already. Interesting. Now in chemicals. University of California, Berkeley. So, producing plutonium in useful quantities for the first time was a major part of the so-called Manhattan Project during World War II that developed the first atomic bombs, so-called atomic bombs. But nevertheless, it was also this Pluto bombs, let's put it this way, yeah, let's just exchange plutonium with Pluto, yeah, so these Pluto bombs made a radical change once again for the worse, because then people had fear of being bombarded by the United States and annihilated, and what else, and radiated, and what else. And that also was then, let's put it on common ground spread, I think that the so-called atom bombs, they were just being the focus of the Cold War between United States and Russia in the 1950s, 60s, and so forth, until the official collapse of the Soviet Union in 1990 somewhere. So out of a sudden, with the discovery of Uranus, it's not only 7 visible planetary bodies, the 5 traditional, plus the sun and the moon, who are not planets in their system, because the moon is just an Earth satellite or trabant, which we say here, and the sun is the engine of our universe, or in our solar system, the Roman god Sol. Now they had more than 8, more than 7, but 8. Yeah. But William Herschel did not discover it by the naked eye, but William Herschel was a discoverer and a scientist, so that means he in Bath in Great Britain, where they have a very interesting Catholic order also, he discovered it with the help of his sister Caroline, who was a silent partner in his story, who had reached an age of 97. And he was seen as one of the first female pioneers of astronomy. That's very, very important, because Uranus also means a radical change in sexuality. So that was the first planet who has been discovered by a telescope, so by science. It was the first planet which has been discovered by a female scientist, Caroline Herschel. So Uranus often has been seen as being androgynous. And that would also explain your rainbow, LGBTQ, 60 genders and all the stuff. So Pluto in Uranus would also then improve the situation for people who are having their sexuality being seen as a kind of uranium. That is the sexuality which is gender fluid, So you can decide whatever you want to be. You're eccentric, which refers to the symbol. You want to be like God, which refers once again to the symbol of Uranus. And Uranus has much to do with information. Uranus has much to do with computers. So therefore you can say also that would be the age of computer sex, games, puppets, what else? Everything you will see if I'm right or if I'm wrong, and I guess I'm quite right, on the right track there. And I'm not proud of being right, because I see that this world is just going down the drain. Yeah, but Uranus was the big game changer with a telescope. That means that's the first time that somebody had to believe in a planet which they could not see. And this tradition has been multiplied since then. You see that they have their telescopes, they have their microscopes, they have their things that you have to believe because you can't see it. You can't see that virus, you can't see that planet, you can't see these small parts of a cell. You can't see it, you have to believe it. So Uranus was the first time that people had to believe a scientist because he had the tools which you don't have. So, during this period also you have the American Revolution, which is taking place between 1775 and 1783, where the 13 colonies, these East India flag, 13 stripes, colonies declared independence from Great Britain, culminating with the birth of the United States of America. Yeah, the way that they attempted to set up their democracy, it has the stamp of Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto's ingress in the Aquarius in the middle of the Revolutionary War, what that demarcates is the beginning of France's involvement in the war, and some say that this also led then to the beheading of their king within the French Revolution. But there's also a little bit story behind, of course. 15 years later, after the American Revolution, the kings, so the French king's head, getting his head guillotined in part because of all the money he spent on the American Revolutionary War some 15 years earlier. And I added, not because of money. I don't think so. I think that was because of other things. If you believe it, you see that I wasn't there. Brett, you're still with me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the Pluto in Aquarius period, of course, includes the French Revolution, which means that under the cover of Freemasonry, once again, not only in the United States of America, but also in France, so the powers to be, let's say the people with the big money, so let's say the Vatican has, with the help of Jesuits.
Whoa, the founding of the United States. Was it Lorenzo Ricci?
Yeah, I think you're right. Lorenzo Ricci, yes. He died officially in 1775, so that could be Lorenzo Ricci, yeah. Italian Jesuit. Ricci, yeah. That was Ricci. United States, Relief Act, Great Britain. The Restraining Order for the Illuminati, the founding of Georgetown University, Washington, D.C.
Yes.
French Revolution.
Yes.
Guillotine, the invention of the guillotine, and the founding of the United Kingdom Jesuit Stonyhurst University. And Henry Cavendish, Freemason scientist. Okay, so let's get back to that script. The period ended with basically Napoleon invading Egypt and the revolution going global. Because the French Revolution is the other major thing that happens during this period besides the American Revolution. Washington's presidency ended after 2 terms towards the end of Pluto in Aquarius. So, when they had the French Revolution, it gets more interesting now. Then they have a left wing and a right wing. Yeah, you see that's the the order of seats in the so-called parliament. Parliament comes from parlar, to parlament means to talk. On the left wing, you got the revolutionists, and then the right wing, you got the conservatives. So the right wing are the conservatives usually. And now that we have a shift in all the society, of course, the left wing politics are being favored everywhere. So one thing leads to another. This king is sentenced to death for treachery. He's guillotined. Then the Great Terror has sprung up. People are so paranoid that people are denouncing each other, and thousands, tens of thousands, I forgot the figure, but a whole lot of people wind up losing their lives in a guillotine because they're accused, rightly or wrongly, of being enemies of the state. Does that sound familiar? With people are so paranoid that people denouncing each other, I was instantly reminded of 2020.
Right.
Enemy of the state. Yeah, no, you're swine, you're not, don't have any solidarity, and yeah. Yeah, and this device, this guillotine, was very becoming popular. A device technology for ending somebody's lives would also be Pluto, of course. It was a physician, actually, Joseph Ignaz Guillotin, who proposed to the National Assembly that capital punishment should always take the form of decapitation by means of a simple mechanism. This period has been known as the Reign of Terror, from 1793, 1794. The execution of Robespierre ends the Great Terror. He's one of the people who was on the Committee for Public Safety, which is a 12-man little committee that basically runs the whole revolutionary effort. 12 men. Interesting, huh? What a coincidence, 12 men. And they are largely responsible for at least for sentencing the people who get sent to the guillotine, if not outright denouncing them. At the end of this period, the Rosetta Stone is discovered by scholars, Egyptology. Then there is another revolution which has been quite rarely been talking about. This Haitian revolution is the most important of them all because it's a nation of slaves against their enslavers. And it's the first and only nation. It's the first and only nation founded by former slaves, formed in a slave uprising. The Declaration of the Rights of Man. So, in 1796, within that period of Pluto in Aquarius, a certain Edward Jenner, a Freemason by the way, develops the first smallpox vaccine, revolutionizing preventative medicine. In 1796, Alessandro Volta invents the first true battery, establishing sustained electrical currents. The Watt's steam engine is developed in 1785, which is an improvement of the steam engine, which ended up then spurring the Industrial Revolution, transforming manufacturing and driving economic growth. Yeah, so these are just all these revolutions within Pluto and Aquarius. Scientists inventing things for the sake of inventing things without thinking about the ethical implications. Yeah, to think of 2020. And this is something that came up first earlier with like the development of gunpowder and guns and things like this, and those just being used as a mass weapon or war to cause huge amounts of destruction from something earlier, that when people like alchemists like exploring different forms of medicine or thinking they have developed a form of medicine. 1783, it had their first successful hot air balloon flight, which also meant the start of air travel, more or less. Hot air balloon. The Peace of Versailles ends the Revolutionary War. They're in Paris negotiating the end of the American Revolutionary War when the Montgolfier brothers are doing these demonstrations. The Montgolfier brothers are doing these demonstrations. So start of the aircraft age. The Montgolfier brothers decided to use hot air with hydrogen. Yeah, very interesting. You see them with the hot air and then the balloon. When you think about Uranus as the god of the sky then, and it was just a little bit before that Uranus has been discovered. Interesting. 1783. When Uranus had been discovered? Uranus, let me look it up. 13th of March. How convenient, 13th of March. Yeah, and in 1783, the Montgolfier brothers, they did a short hop with the balloon. The god of the air, the god of the sky. Their historic flight sent shockwaves across Europe because, of course, you see that you have to first think of the powers to be, and they thought, okay, that is a great chance to make then war from the air to overlook battlefields, for example. Don't think for one moment that anybody thought, okay, that would be easing up all the travel across oceans or what. I think the first and foremost goal in every scientific exploration and discovery is the use of military, or at least the use for the powers to be, how they can make money out of it or have a certain advantage. So on that period also, it was a certain writer called Mary Shelley who wrote Frankenstein. Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein, who was born with Pluto in Aquarius, conjunct the midheaven in her chart, so that's her life goal, Pluto in Aquarius. And she wrote something that would have be a profound impact on seeing the possibility of creating life. I think that in the countries that I have come across, I think that most everybody knows what Frankenstein means. I got a commentator here, really interesting. Following the Pluto volcanoes and Aquarius cold air lines of associations, it's worth mentioning that the contest that led to Mary Shelley creating Frankenstein was made during so-called the year without summer. Here's an excerpt from the Wikipedia on Shelley's Frankenstein. Quote unquote, during the rainy summer of 1816, the so-called year without a summer, the world was locked into a long, cold, volcanic winter caused by the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815. Interesting, huh? So they at least claim, Wikipedia claims, that a cold winter, or the cooling down of the atmosphere, that's one goal of Mr. Bill Gates and all these people, has been caused by the eruption of Mount Tambora in 1815. Mary Shelley, aged 18, and her lover, a future husband, Pierre Shelley, visited Lord Byron at the Villa Diodati by Lake Geneva in Switzerland's Alps. The weather was too cold and dreary that summer to enjoy the outdoor holiday activities they had planned, so the group retired indoors until dawn. Perhaps historical stuff involving volcanoes may be another interesting thing to look for these Pluto Aquarius periods. Yeah, that's what I assumed right from the beginning. Let's look up this interesting Mount Tambora. Tambora, Indonesia. So that means that the outbreak and the eruption of a volcano in Indonesia, this is thousands of miles away from Switzerland, has, or at least officially, an impact for the climate in Europe. Let's have it in English. An active stratovolcano in Indonesia. Before 1815, its elevation reached more than 14,000 feet, making it one of the tallest peaks in Indonesia. 1815, come on, give me something. 1815 eruptions. A moderate-sized eruption on 5th of April 1815 was followed by thunderous detonation sounds that could be heard in Ternate on the Molucca Islands. Volcanic ash began to fall. What was first thought to be the sound of firing guns was heard on Sumatra Island. Eruptions intensified. Volcanic explosivity index of 7. The 1815 Tambora eruption is the largest and most devastating observed eruption in recorded history. Interesting. Let's look it up if Wikipedia says something about the summer. Summer. Global effects. Look, a year without a summer. The 1815 eruption released 10 to 120 million tons of sulfur into the stratosphere, causing a global climate anomaly. Different methods have been used to estimate the ejected sulfur mass. The petrological method, an optical depth measurement based on anatomical observations, and the polar ice core sulfate concentration methods, which calibrated against cores from Greenland and Antarctica. How fitting. Interesting. If you then compare all the stuff which we have learned from America and the volcanoes and Mount Michael in the Antarctic and all the alike, then the outbreak of one or the outbreak of many of these volcanoes, maybe in the Ring of Fire, that will cause then a global climate catastrophe. Interesting. So, the story of Frankenstein, or some of the metaphors underlying, are super tight with Pluto and Aquarius. You see that Pluto and Aquarius also people can come up with and say, yeah, we can create artificial life. You see, if they claim they have an artificial intelligence, so the logical next step would be, we need the body for the artificial intelligence, right? So, and then we are at the homunculus or the Frankenstein. That's what we have talked about in the giant sessions 1 year ago. And now it gets very ironically, for several reasons, not only the reason that Chris Brennan is pointing out here. He says, ironically, I asked the artificial intelligence, which is ironic because like some of these themes are coming up now. I asked the artificial intelligence to write a summary of Frankenstein, and here's some of the primary things that are important. This is now the summary, quote unquote. Driven by the death of his mother and a fascination with life and death, the scientist abandons everything for his scientific studies, and he becomes consumed with the idea of creating life itself. Yeah, you see that creating life means to play God. So, in a secluded laboratory, the scientist Victor, you know why he has been called Victor? That was the reason, because Mary Shelley picked up Victor. I know that was something about the university then, but as faith will have it, or just a coincidence, Victor means victory in Roman. Stitches together body parts and animates the creature through an unspecified scientific process. I think it was electricity then, or lightning or what else. Horrified by its appearance, he abandons it, leaving the creature alone and confused. Forced to fend for itself, the creature learns to read, speak, and understand human emotions through stolen books and observation. He longs for acceptance and companionship, but his monstrous appearance triggers fear and rejection wherever he goes. Unable to find acceptance, the creature seeks vengeance on Victor for abandoning him. The revenge spirals into tragedy, resulting in the death of Victor's younger brother William and his adopted sister Justine. Guilt-ridden and grief-stricken, Victor attempts to atone by creating a female companion for the creature, hoping to quell his loneliness. Another homunculus, I guess. However, horrified by the potential consequences, he destroys the second creature before it is completed. Enraged, the original creature vows revenge and disappears. The story culminates in the... Brad?
In the Arctic?
Why?
Don't know.
Because they want to play God. And God is in the north. Where Victor, pursued, at least that's my explanation, where Victor, pursued by the vengeful creature, becomes consumed by his own creation, and both perish in a final confrontation, leaving a message of caution about the dangers of unchecked ambition and the consequence of playing with God.
Oh, wow.
And this is, of course, the counter-creation. Yeah, that's what Satan is only going to do artificially. Artificial intelligence, artificial bodies, artificial word. Come on, guys. This is quite easy. This is the internet of things. So this is really interesting, and some of the main novels that are explored, some of the main themes that are explored in the novel are one, the dangers of scientific ambition, where Frankenstein's story serves as a cautionary tale about the potential dangers of scientific progress when pursued without ethical consideration. And I think that's a really core in Pluto and Aquarius theme, which means that somebody gets white paper for all the stuff they want to invent. Yeah, they are free whatever they come up with. And I think that we will see also in medicine. You see, it started with artificial limbs, heart transplants, whatever you can come up with. And they will always say that's the benefit of mankind. But as they have no ethical limit, and if they have no belief in God, you see that they won't have, the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit, literally. You see that doctors, not by accident, has been named as demigods. Mary Shelley was born towards the Pluto in Aquarius and the end of the scientific revolution, and part of the focus here was on the ethical implications of scientific advancements, as well as the potential dangers and responsibilities that come with pushing the boundaries of knowledge in the attempt to create artificial life. You see, first of all, they come up with artificial intelligence, and if the majority of people then accepts artificial intelligence, then you can have your robot friend. We have already talked about this. Pluto in Aquarius. The idea of creating artificial life. Yeah. What's it in Matthew? Like in the days of Noah.
Mm-hmm. So will be.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
No? Mary Shelley shortly before she had the dream of Frankenstein, she had given birth, or let's say a vision or what else, she had given birth to a child who soon died after. Yeah. So, logically, these two astrologers say if we can take from that and anticipate how some past trends from history are becoming or will become relevant again for us today over the next 20 years, the utilization of technology advancements in order to have power and control. And of course, the sacrifice of individuality for the common good, for social, for society. Yeah, caritas in veritate. Yeah, the information that is under the control of centralized authorities. Yeah. That's not information then, if it is censored, right? That's not only information, this is then doctrine. You have to believe it. And in the digital age, it means one or zero. 0 or 1. Either you're out or you're in. There is no in between. There is no discussion. There is no agreement. Either you accept everything that the state is putting out as truth, or you don't accept and then you're out. Don't get anything to eat. For example. Don't be allowed to move outside your home, whatever that will be. No, you're not allowed to speak. Also, cats are not allowed to speak then.
Did you hear that?
Yes, of course I did hear. Oh, God. Oh, she's hungry. When does it end? When does it end? Tell her 10 minutes.
Oh, you should see her. It's so funny.
You can flash your fingers on one hand. You can flash your fingers on both hands, and then she knows it's 10 minutes. Okay. There's also the possibility, or there's also possible something about the idea of what it means to be foreign or alien in general becoming relevant again, both in the sense of AI, which the emergence of artificial intelligence and creating a new sentient species on Earth, which is essentially if scientists are capable or successful in creating artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence, that's what it would be, is like creating another sentient species on Earth. Maybe even alien life being found, even in microbial form or in what else? In other places in our solar system. Yeah, solar system. You see that they accept, of course, all the science, or perhaps beyond. AI technologies are developed to help us better understand how they communicate with animals. Even the recognition of animals as being more sentient than humans often give them credit for, as new AI technologies are developed to help us better understand how they communicate. Yeah. If AI taught us how to communicate with dolphins and octopus and, primates and all the stuff, yeah. It's now science fiction, but you see that they will come up with something. Something's happening soon in 2030 in Europe, one of Jupiter's moon. It's like an icy moon. They're going to send a probe beneath the ice to see if there are microbial life down there that's supposed to land in 2030. I said, oh yeah, that is quite fitting, 2030, huh? My. But during the next 20 years, Pluto in Aquarius, discovering something as simple as finding that basic forms of life existed somewhere other than Earth, then we would have a huge, like, earth-shattering effect of our conceptualization of ourselves, of humanity, of our place in the universe, and other things. Yeah, that's the same approach as happening with Copernicus. So let's say that they will find something in science, I guess. I highly suppose they find something in science that they like to have as a proof that we have not been created by God, but this just evolution theory has now been proven. Something like that would be my best guess. Can be revolutionary as what Copernicus unleashed on the world 3 Pluto cycles ago. Maybe more unidentified flying objects, because it's already been discussed in Congress, so that is also one thing that they will come up with, I guess. China, technology, transmissions. Yeah, no. Uranus and Gemini is going to be trining Pluto. Yes. A trigon trining Pluto means 120 degrees, so that's usually seen as a happy aspect. Pluto in Aquarius, that's it's not now too specific for the general audience. "17 pages. Institutionalized censorship attempts to suppress new discoveries or ideas with extreme methods." No. Why I think they don't believe in the Bible is, for example, this quote: "Institutionalized censorship attempts to suppress new discovery or ideas with extreme methods." Copernicus' discovery about the sun being the center of the solar system, how that was suppressed initially, but that eventually, it couldn't be suppressed forever because it actually was true.
Ah, there you go. Bingo.
Yeah, so I don't have to ask anyone then. Yeah, you see, and then also to center ourselves, center ourselves too much, not to center ourselves too much. Yeah. Astrology does reveal an actual property of nature. Yeah, if you think so. I have an objection to that remark here in that video, because I think astronomy does, but not astrology.
There you go.
You see, the astrology deals with real objects.
Yes.
But astrology means it's what you make out of it. Monopolies, Pluto, monopoly of technology and power, advantage and influence. Yeah, you see that drones also. Yeah, Pluto, Uranus, god of the sky. Yeah, so flying drones means flying instruments of death. Yeah, so that would also be the combination of Pluto, death, and Uranus, technical advances, and the god of the sky. Yeah, so flying death or flying weapons would also be Uranus, Pluto. So maybe that we can expect something there, like a little bit of maybe this Ronald Reagan, what was it then? SDI, 1980s.
Oh, Strategic Defense Initiative. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, new kind of levels of war, and I think that not will be fought with people, but I think that will be fought with weapons, destruction, satellites, robots, what else? Technology. And also a war on television, on information, of course. Yeah, Uranus means computer age. Yeah, science and revolutionary science. You see that you see nowadays everything is live and there's a camera anywhere. Yeah, so therefore I guess that we will see something that will convince the people that it's real. Yeah, that's, you can fill in the brackets. Yeah, a monster out of the sea, or just Virgin Mary appearing. Yeah, you see that. I think that's also very fitting for Pluto in Uranus. Yeah, a totally shift in religion, so that people who did not believe in anything will maybe believe in it when 1 billion people or more are seeing it on the television. That's not a lucky guess. That's real, my thinking that this will happen, because people can be so easily convinced, because the majority of media is also just parroting all the official doctrine which we have seen in 2020. Yeah, artificial intelligence employed in the battlefield, sure. Autonomous machines. Can autonomous machines, should they be given the okay to like kill humans without any humans oversight? Yeah, all this stuff is just will be exploring, just like the Terminator. Some things are just will become real and not science fiction. You see, the science fiction of the 19th century from Jules Verne of the Man of the Moon has at least officially become state doctrine in 1969. So you see, the moon landing would be a one prime example for something that the majority of people still believe, although they haven't witnessed this, but because of the technical improvisations. And that happened in the 1960s age of Aquarius. And so that is very interesting. Not Pluto in Aquarius, however, the age of Aquarius. And this is a big distraction, and God will send him a strong delusion. So Pluto in Aquarius also means the combination of a revolution, that this is Uranus, together with control of death. This is Pluto, the lord of the underworld. Major example, the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. Yeah. COVID broke out with the stellium and Capricorn of Jupiter. COVID broke out, yeah, sure.
Oh boy. Yeah, where to begin with that, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you see that because Aquarius is interesting, because as the god of the air or the god of the sky, that would also mean Pluto Aquarius can also mean the death out of the air. So that means a deadly virus. Yeah, transmitting through the air. Official explanation, not my explanation. Official explanation. Mm-hmm. Could also mean chemical warfare, of course. Uranium, huh? For example.
Yeah, uranium.
Plutonium, yeah. You got the combination then, Pluto and in Uranus. Or Pluto in Aquarius, but the ruler of Aquarius is Uranus.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
So,
wow.
Yeah, airborne disease like pathogen or airborne. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting thing is that not only Pluto is in Aquarius, where the ruler of Aquarius is Uranus, and also don't forget that the ancient ruler of Aquarius is Saturn, and Saturn is also death. Yeah, so it's very interesting. But Uranus also is in the zodiac sign Gemini between 2025 and the early 2030s. Uranus has an orbit velocity of 84 years, so 7 years, yeah, close to 7 years, plus minus, retrograde maybe something would have to look it up, so 7 years. Yeah, so that's quite right. So that we can expect between 2025 and 2030, we can expect something happening. Gemini usually stands for the third house, stands for communication, and also when it comes down to Uranus, which is then the god of the sky, and you see internet, satellites, and all the stuff, we can expect something happening on television, I guess. That would be my lucky guess on that. Yeah, so that's what I think, that you see that early 2030s, that would sum up to the things that we have talked about, Mary apparition and all the stuff, UFOs, everything now is coming slowly into fruition, and we combine all the dots with alien coming, what else, and artificial intelligence and all the stuff. Then slowly, I think then you will have a broader picture where it's most likely that some of this will be combined, and it's most likely to happen, and this is not just out of the blue, but that has been planned long before. You see these staged Roswell incident in 1947. That's almost 80 years ago. Come on. Actually, that's it.
Yeah.
You made
All
it.
Right.
You made it, and your cat also made it.
Yeah, they're really bothering me. They're hungry.
Please do. Okay. We have a break, and we continue this series for the next sessions. And thanks so much for having me. Just looking eagerly, waiting for your comments on all the mess.
Oh, thank you, Michael. It's really, just the history behind this is very interesting. So history repeats itself. And that's one of the reasons why, got to start really thinking about things in detail, like I'm about to go through dramatic change here. I'm just not comfortable living where I live anymore, and I'm gonna make a change.
Germany.
So it's gonna be a big deal and take a lot of energy, and but better safe than sorry is the motto that I'm going with. And there's a lot more than that. But anyway, Michael, this is the 2030 agenda. I mean, that's United Nations is trying to push, what they want. They're going to make us fit their mold, if we pay attention to it. And the people will push back, but of course, there's always going to be the money that will keep them focused on characters like Bill Gates, who has it all, and we worship that. That's really what this world is about. The big money people. And the great men of the earth, as it says in the book of Revelation, I think chapter 18, or is it 17? I forget. But some big things coming down the pike, that's for sure. And we can only take it one day at a time, isn't that right? So I think we should be thankful for what we have today and prepare for what's coming, prepare for the worst, I guess. So Michael, to sum it all up, I think this 2 Corinthians chapter 1, is it? Verses 3 and 4 looks good. Blessed be God, even the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and the God of all comfort, who comforteth us in our tribulation, that we may be able to comfort them which are in trouble by the comfort wherewith we ourselves are comforted of God. Thank you, Michael. Looking forward to the next sessions. Bye-bye.